now be, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you. Welcome to the Ukiah Unified School District meeting. Today is August 13th, 2020, and we are meeting by Zoom in accordance with Governor's Emergency Executive Order, and so that we can have more people available to make public comment. If we had to space people out in our boardroom to make public comment, we wouldn't be able to have as much public comment. Trustee Fernandez.
And you're very quiet.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're really quiet, Trustee Bogart. I can't hear you. I don't know if that's my computer or just you, your computer.
I believe that is just my natural tendency to be.
It's a little muffled.
Oh, well, should I just try and project? Is that better? Okay, I'll just project. It's a different computer than I usually have. I will project. Okay, there we go. So we have called ourselves to order, and we will now reconvene in open session and go on to our flag salute. Ian. Thank you. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our report out from closed session is that on items B7 and B8, both were approved unanimously by roll call vote. Nothing else to report out on that. Is there an approval of the agenda as presented, or was anything pulled?
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. And we note that Trustee Diaz is not with us this evening by previous arrangement. And now, since we are now at C5, the Student Advisor Report, we will now settle back for the hour-long presentation of the curriculum vitae of our new Mason Hoppy. I hope someone told him that we were expecting, you know, a PowerPoint or an interpretive dance. Did she warn you, Mason? Did she warn you?
No, he did not.
Sorry, Nathan, I forgot to tell you about the hour-long presentation. I apologize.
In that, you might just want to take a couple minutes, tell us about yourself, and then tell us anything you'd like us to know from your perspective as a student representative. Thanks.
Right. Okay. So this year is obviously my first year as the ASB representative. I'm going to be a senior at the high school this year, and I've kind of always been into leadership. So I'm pretty connected with the school, and I like to try and get everyone connected and involved. So that is why I applied for this position. And I guess I'll just go ahead and get started if that's okay.
Sure.
So there's, because school hasn't started yet, there's not too much to talk about, but I wanted to go over some of ASB's ideas for this term. And I've also talked to a couple of the leaders of some clubs and talked about how they want to move forward while we are social distancing and at home. So to get started with leadership, they're developing a program called the Sibling Project that has the goal of connecting high school students with elementary and middle school students to provide with like extra motivation and maybe some tutoring as well. So how it's going to work, we're still in the early planning phase, but how it should be working is juniors and seniors from the high school are going to be connected with teachers at middle schools and elementary schools who will then connect each high school student with 2 or 3 elementary or middle school students and help them just with emotional support, and then also with tutoring if they need it with some simple things in their classes. And that will be an ongoing program throughout the period in which we are doing distance education. And then the next thing was the student blog system that we are working to develop, because emails get sent out to kids at the high school all the time, but me being one of the students, I know that we don't always check our emails, and so we don't always get all the information. So we wanted to start a blog system that we're thinking about doing via Google Classroom. So basically everyone can just go on there every day, and we'll have just updates about what's happening at school. And more specific than that, I'm not sure yet, but Mr. Osland was thinking that we could do a podcast system where we would do voice recordings and then kind of like daily announcements type of thing, but on Google Classroom. Okay, and then I was going to go over Summer Academy. So this year, obviously, it took place online in the form of videos. So we had members of ASB talk about their experiences at the high school and then give some general advice to the kids, the incoming freshmen, that is. We had a virtual tour and some other information and resources for the incoming freshmen. And those videos were sent out over email, and they are still up on YouTube, so that when we go back, hopefully if we go back, the kids will be able to continue to look at those videos and revisit the online tour. All right. And then for clubs, so I have talked to STEM Club, and we have a Science Olympiad team where we travel and visit other campuses and compete against other teams. So this year, Science Olympiad as a whole is considering doing an online competition system where instead of traveling to compete against other teams, we will be taking online tests and things like that. And so our STEM club is eager to participate in whatever form they decide, and the president, Sophia Parsons, is working hard with our advisor, Miss Upton, to get all that happening. And then Milk Club, I talked to the president of Milk Club, and they don't have solid plans for meetings quite yet, but they're considering doing Zoom gatherings like many of the other clubs are. And they are also planning on trying to sell merchandise to raise money for the club. And then leadership will continue to hold their mandatory ASB meetings and try to keep everyone else connected with formal Zoom meetings as well. And then with homecoming delayed, we are trying to get homecoming to happen in the spring. And leadership has more time to focus on other things because homecoming is delayed. So we're going to be working full time to try and get everyone connected, meaning keeping kids within the high school connected and keeping those younger kids with the sibling project I talked about earlier. And that is about it for my report today. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much and welcome. We appreciate your being here, Mason.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mason? All right. They're just being nice to you.
Can I say something?
Please.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. And Mason, I really appreciate how thorough you were for all the things that are going on that can't be going on. It's like I felt oh, things are really happening, and I truly appreciate knowing about them like this. I hadn't it didn't. Somehow I just thought it would be, oh my goodness, we can't do very much. And I appreciate you guys are doing a lot. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. I think everyone is working hard to make sure that things continue on as normal as possible. So I'm excited
Great.
too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Great. Well, thank you. So in this kind of format, it's sometimes hard for me to see when somebody wants to say something, but you are welcome to comment at any time, just like all the other board members are. So just give me a hi sign or something if I don't see you looking. Or you can be very tricky and put up your little hand here on the bottom of the Zoom. But we're old, so we really don't do that much. Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? There had been none received recently, but I don't know if something happened in the last few minutes.
We've not received any public comment.
Okay, so an hour and 45 minutes last time and 0 this time. Okay then. All right, well, we will move on then. Of course, if there's other public comments about the agenda items, we will take those when we come to them. Employee organizations, brief reports, California School Employees Association, CSEA. Lisa.
Hello.
Hi.
Hope everybody is well. Good to see you guys. I wanted to start off by saying thank you, Megan, what you said last time, even though it made me cry. I really appreciated that. I am such a baby. Okay, hold on. I'm going to get it together. Wait.
Couldn't say anything.
Oh, God. So as we all know, it's really difficult. And who's paying for this the most through this pandemic is our children, right? So none of us can do anything that's going to please everybody. And so I really want to, thank each and every one of you for doing what you need to do to take consideration for not only the employees, but our children, and making the hard decisions to keep everybody safe, but still learning. It's difficult. It's a very huge task, and it's extremely hard. So I just wanted to thank you all for everything that you do and for advocating for our kids, because, that's what we're here for. My brief report is 4 of us attended the CSEA conference this year, and it was Zoom. It was the first virtual, and it was huge because it was virtual. And so there was some little bumps in the beginning, but they finally got it figured out, and it was pretty, it went smoothly more the second day than the first day. But we we learned some stuff, and a lot of the new people that had never attended conference learned what it was how to vote, and some, litigation kind of stuff, which they had no clue about. They're like, what are they talking about? So it was a good experience for them. Yesterday, was that yesterday? No, Monday we held our first virtual CSEA meeting for our local chapter to ratify our MOU for this school year. And that passed with over 80%. Of course, there was one that was not happy, and we're always going to have 1, 2, or 3, or 4. So that did go through, and I want to thank the district and the board for working with us. I know that it's not easy, and I try to do the best I can to know that you guys are really crunched for time to get in, get stuff done, and move on, because I really feel like to hold administration in a meeting for days on end it doesn't do any good for our kids, because we need to be focusing on how we can get this distance learning off the ground and make sure it's successful. So I just want to thank you guys for working with us and being collaborative and be able to come to an agreement that most everybody was happy with. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Fernandez?
Lisa, I just wanted to thank you, because it has been such a pleasure to work with you with CSEA. And I so deeply appreciate how positive you are and how professional you are and how supportive. It's made a difference that I can feel, and I know others can feel. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because it's been really wonderful, and very much appreciate how you have handled business. So thank you for that, and for supporting the kids.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else? Okay. Next, A7B, Ukiah Teachers Association, Terry DeSpalke.
Hi, good evening, board members and Superintendent Cuban. I hope you can hear me. UTA members are really relieved that the conditions agreed to in the recently signed MOU acknowledge that safety for students, teachers, and staff is of utmost importance for all of us. So I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank UTA membership, our community, our teachers, our classified staff, our parents, our administrators, our students for all of your support. And thank you every person who took time out of their day to support a healthy workplace and environment. It's very much appreciated. That being said, being a part of this wonderful profession of teaching is really a privilege. And it's been a really new time for all of us involved, especially all of us senior teachers. As we know, summer school didn't happen as we expected it to, but teachers spent the bulk of their summer being busy honing their skills, building new technology skill sets to be able to tackle our new teaching environment. One that is unlike anything that we have ever experienced. I want to remind the board of the need to listen to teachers as we are the ones implementing the plan, the programs, and the classes for our students. We appreciate that the board is willing to follow the advice of Dr. Duhan's suggestion on July 15th and change from the decision of in-person hybrid to remote learning instruction. And we would hope that in the future, our voices, our requests, and our role within the system would also be listened to with the same consideration. As professionals, we have a pretty darn good sense about what's best for our students. Teachers' choice is so important. Thank you for offering the waiver option for remote learning from home to our district administration and the board members. We've already seen 3 COVID-19 outbreaks in UUSD in the short time we've been back in school just this week as the adults. And these were some of the very concerns we had before negotiations finished. What we all imagine is there will come a time this year where a decision will be made and we are asked to pivot to hybrid or all return to in-class learning. In that future, we look forward to being a part of the process and deciding when it is safe to go back to in-person teaching and how we should make that transition smoothly for all of us. We urge the board and district management to listen to our voices with open ears and be able to hear the concerns and address the issues. UTA knows, and I know, that we must begin to build up the level of trust that once was. We can only do this with open minds and open ears, all of us. So thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Acceptance of donations. We have one donation in the amount of $210 to the Ukiah High Music Program from Jeff Adair, Joe Swearingen, F. Robert Revelis, and Waylon Hockemeyer. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Thank you. Okay, we're waiting on a second. Okay, thank you, Trustee Nelson. All those in favor of accepting the donation as listed?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Next, we are looking forward to our leadership team report from Christy Pitroncelli-Smith.
Hi, good evening, President Mulgard and trustees. It's always my pleasure to be with you for these events, and I feel honored to come back so quickly because if you recall, was presenting last to you in March of the adult school and the programs. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and this should work, hopefully. No. Do you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. So what I'd like to share with you all tonight, 2 things. First, as a follow-up to my March presentation, if you recall, President Mulgard, you asked a question about our funding and had requested that I report back to you all regarding the different ways the adult education is funded. So I'm happy to do that tonight. And then I'll give you all a quick overview of how our different programs are looking forward to starting up in the next few weeks. So first off, for our funding, and let me know, did my screen switch to the funding slide?
Perfectly, yes.
Awesome, okay. So our adult ed funding, we have ongoing funding from a few different sources. The first one is called the California Adult Ed Program, or CAPE as we call it. And our membership through the Mendocino Lake Adult and Career Education Consortium is how we are funded and allocated funds every year. And that is partially based on, if you recall, maintenance of effort funds that were ongoing through the district up until approximately 2014-15. We were funded at that level and have enjoyed increases since then up until this year. So our current funding levels of $795,524 is what we're at right now. And this funding is the same as our last year's funding. So it was given to us in a similar fashion like the K-12 without the COLA, but everything was status quo. So we're happy to have that. So we're able to continue all programs this year as we were last year. In addition to that funding, we also have received a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, grant. And I'm happy to report we have successfully received the second cycle of this grant beginning this school year. So the last 3 years was the first cycle. And the funding is given based on student performance. So it's highly competitive and a lot of data reporting. And we have to give students pre and post assessments to show educational gains. And that is one of the main factors for this funding level. And we are receiving approximately $150,000 for this school year. I have to say approximate because we still haven't gotten the formal GAN, but it should be around that amount. So those two sources are ongoing. And then the third source being our correctional education apportionment. As you're aware, we have educational setting in the Mendocino County Jail, and that funding through the regular apportionment funding of attendance, if you will, similar to K-12 funding, we have been receiving approximately, or on average, $18,000 a year. And that's an average because the ebb and flow, of course, of the attendance of this population, the funding is never static or guaranteed. And with personnel sometimes coming and going in that setting, it makes it hard to have a consistent level. And it doesn't fully fund the activity in there. So we supplement with the WIOA and the CAPE money to keep the correctional facility instructional program going. Last but not least, of course, I have to say that our support and funding through the district in the different departments that support us daily, such as maintenance, grounds, technology, fiscal, and the district admin, through all the efforts of all those people, the district general fund, as I see it, is supporting us greatly. And I can't even begin to put a price tag on that. That is priceless, all that support. We would not be functional without all of it. Then the last funding I just added today, because I was so excited to find out we were successfully awarded a third portion of this grant that I've worked in the last 6 months to receive for our adult ed school, the CARES Act Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. This funding coming from the federal government is for post-secondary institutions. And because our vocational nursing program is a post-secondary level program and is eligible for federal financial aid, we are eligible for this funding. So today we received word of the third section of this grant. We received an additional funds, and for a total of all three over the last 6 months, we received $324,718. And that's very exciting to support our students. It's helping to relieve some of their tuition burden. We have increased costs, of course, with our instructional time and the training the teachers participated in to switch quickly to online. And we're hoping to use some of that for health and safety measures we've put into place. So all of that together equals the funding for the adult ed programs we have here at Ukiah Adult School. So with your permission, I'll move on to the next slide, which is program updates, unless you have any questions for me regarding funding.
Any questions? No, go on. Thank you.
Trustee Nelson had his hand up.
Oh, I can't even see them.
You're muted, Tyler.
Man, having a hard time getting that mute button off. And I go correctional facilities. How many students do you teach at the correctional facility annually or monthly? I'm not sure how to ask that.
Sure, I could give you the average attendance monthly. Well, the enrolled students hover around 100. And I say enrolled because whether they can come to class on any given week or day depends on a lot of variables. But we ebb and flow approximately 100 students throughout the year. And of course, sometimes upon release, then we work hard to continue their education over here with us on site at the main campus. The teacher can only see in class a ratio of 10 to 1, so that limits the participation. But with the paraprofessional we hired in that setting, we are able to go up to 15 to 1. But again, that's when they're able to be there, and they, I'll speak more to how they're working their program now, given all the shelter-in-place measures.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'll move on and take more questions at the end if needed. So our program updates, we have our high school diploma program on site in the correctional facility and in Round Valley. And I'm happy to say all 3 programs worked well through the spring semester in an independent study model. And we're continuing that model as we worked with students and gave options for online learning. It was interesting to find the majority of our students were more comfortable and successful in an independent study model. So we are implementing that, and thank you for your approval on that in a previous board meeting. Our Pearson View Testing Center will continue every Tuesday here on campus. We revamped our lab, spread out the computers, have less testing stations, and have implemented many health and safety measures. And we're looking forward to starting that up September 1st. The calls and the inquiries have continued greatly for those tests, many of those being teacher credentialing tests that we deliver, as well as the GED and other workplace type certifications. Our Adults with Disabilities program, the teachers we fund and support over at UVA, or MyActima as you may know it. I spoke with their director, Pam Jensen, and she shared with me they're actually having a lot of fun during this remote learning. They're working hard to just meet their clients' needs in the different ways that those clients learn. They are using Zoom classes for many of their clients, and they've found themselves on the Zoom longer than you might expect in a regular setting because the students are enjoying it so much they even want to stay on for their lunch break and have lunch with their teacher. So that's kind of been fun to hear. Some of the students are truly driving their learning by requesting certain kinds of learning. For example, one student said to their instructor, "I want to learn how to read." And another one said, "Well, I want to learn how to cook." So they're through those Zoom meetings and through home visits, bringing them supplies to do those things. They're having fun with that. And then some of their students and clients that live in care homes or are in their homes, if you will, in shelter in place, they're doing site visits through the windows outside the house, in the front yard, through the care home windows, and working with the staffs in those facilities. They're delivering instruction and support to these students pretty much in any way you can imagine. But the main thing Pam said was they're having a lot of fun, and they created a Reimagine committee. And this committee is all about reimagining how they can deliver instruction and support learning with their clients. Our English as a Second Language program is twofold. We have a Mendocino College class that we co-enroll here, and that class is now all online through Mendocino College. So we'll be mostly just supporting those students with registration and enrollment. And if students have no technology, we'll work with them to try and support that in connecting them with the college resources. And then we have another in-house class that will work independently. It's a literacy prep class to support those beginning learners. And that teacher plans to have office hours to have students access her digitally as well as one-on-one if they want more packet work to support their learning. Our citizenship class, we are very sad to say, of course, is not able to be offered. So the teacher has developed some office hours, making himself available, and we're hoping students will still come in and let us know they have needs, and he can help support them through their citizenship application as well as preparation for that process. And then last but not least, our vocational nursing program. As of today, I can say we're excited that our students are cleared to go back to their clinical rotations, both at Adventist Health, Ukiah Valley, and Sutter Lakeside and Lakeport. We are trying to build a lot of alternative plans in place for the what if they can't go, because that could happen any day. But for now, we're ready for them to go back and start that in a week. And we've purchased a lot of extra personal protective equipment for them to go into those settings. Their content will continue to be delivered online through Google Classroom. The teacher had a lot of success doing that in the spring. She's successfully went through that huge learning curve. As a nurse and not an educator by trade, she learned quickly how to do that and effectively. We had lots of positive student feedback through our survey on their experience with that. That is it for our programs and where we're at Ukiah Adult School. So any questions for me?
Trustees?
Can I just say that I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, Christy?
Thank you, Bea.
I like how you keep pushing on, looking for everything, every angle.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Van Sant?
I may have missed it, Christy, but it sounds like one of your courses is still offered on site, and now the screen's gone, so I can't. Was it the high school equivalency? Did I miss that?
Well, we're offering that through independent study.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, no, they're working on their own at home, and then they can access their teachers once a week in the traditional independent study model.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and attentiveness, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Now our distance learning update.
I will, it said I'm muted, but I don't think I am. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will do an intro to this. Katie and I are tag teaming this report to the board, but we wanted to give a report to the board on our progress in our distance learning program. And I do want to say that starting in May, we did a really great effort partnering with our stakeholders. We had teachers on every committee, every work group that we had in this district, and we worked with UTA to help identify the teachers on those committees, and CSEA was involved with us as well. We had parent representatives and consulted with parents on our plan as well for all of our different models. But I have appreciated the strong partnership that we have, and appreciate the work that we did collaboratively, and we have every intention of continuing to work collaboratively as we have all along in this process. And so I just want to acknowledge the many teachers who worked on our plan with us. And as we know in this district, we believe in partnering with our employees and our employee groups, and we will continue to do that. And I also want to give a great shout out to our Board of Trustees for your tireless advocacy for our kids in this district. I've worked with many of you for many years now. Bea's been here longer than I have, but this is my 9th year in the district. And I can honestly say that this board is definitely an amazing advocate for kids and teachers and the rest of our staff in our community. So I just, as we roll into this plan and this very, very challenging time period, I want to thank you so much for your support of us. And I echo Lisa's comments. I know this has been a really hard month, and I just want to appreciate all of you board members for everything that you do to lay the conditions out for us to continue to collaborate and to continue to have very high standards for our distance learning program. So thank you. It's definitely going to be a challenging year, but we can do it. We've got a great working relationship and a really supportive community. And while I'm on thank yous, and maybe I'll skip my superintendent's report and this will be part of it, but the city of Ukiah has just been a remarkable support to us. We've had a slight bumpy week, and they have been there for us every step of the way this week to provide backup support to us. So I really love this community and how it comes together, especially in a crisis. And this is a pretty long one. So appreciate everybody's words of support and all that you do as trustees to make sure that our teachers, our classified employees, and our kids have what they need to be successful. So we're going to give you an update on a few things. A couple of these are repeats, so we won't go into too much depth with them. But we also have a budget report that's related to this in Steve's PowerPoint presentation. So we'll probably have you hold your board questions or your budget questions related to distance learning until Steve's presentation. But Katie, do you want to share your screen and we'll get started? And the first couple of slides are really just a reminder about the safety precautions that we have in place in our district. And I really want to thank Gabe Sherman, our Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation, and his whole crew for all that they've done to put everything in place to ensure that we have, that we're complying with everything related to health orders and we continue to have safe campuses. So Katie, I have a black screen.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to share this. Give me one more second.
That's okay.
What it's doing.
And as the public is listening in here too, we just want to remind everybody that as we are in the process right now of deploying over 6,000 Chromebooks to our students and over 500 wireless hotspots. And to say, I can't say enough about our technology team. They are incredible human beings and they go above and beyond for our kids, and it is really intense right now. So I appreciate all of them so much. So as the community comes to pick up their materials over the next few days, Katie, if you want to go to the first slide, just want to remind people of the importance of physical distancing. These are all part of all of our pickup plans and distance learning. Facial coverings are required for sure. Frequent hand washing and sanitizing. We're asking people who come into our buildings for any reason. We are scheduling appointments with people, and I know that's a change in education. We're used to just stopping by as parents, and we really need people to schedule appointments, and we'll get you in there as soon as we can. With that, we've got a health screening protocol in place. We've got increased cleaning and sanitation, and thank you so much to the school board for approving additional funding to help with cleaning and sanitation and staffing related to custodial. And then we've also identified some quarantine and school closure procedures. So this is in effect during distance learning, and this next slide is truly just a reminder, Katie, if you want to scroll forward here. We've acquired a lot of personal protective equipment in our district. And as you enter our building now, there's a screening process in place. We have a hand sanitizer station right there for people to use. If people forget their masks, we've got some masks readily available. Our receptionist has plexiglass around her desk to provide an additional barrier. And so we have acquired a lot of personal protective equipment to make sure that when we're in person with each other or with the public or our kids, that we have a lot of safety protocols and protective equipment in place. So we will move forward with that. That's just a little bit on safety. Technology, all students in grades transitional kindergarten through 12 will be issued a Chromebook. And we also are, our staff, our school sites have done a remarkable job identifying families that need internet hotspots because they don't have internet at home. And then we've purchased a lot of instructional technology to support distance learning so that kids can use a variety of programs. These have primarily been teacher identified. And so we're implementing those. We've provided training on those programs as well. All of California is ordering Chromebooks, and they have been since way back in May and June. And so we have about 2,000 of our Chromebooks on back order right now. And evidently there are about 100,000 on back order, and there are 10,000 before us. So we're not way there at the end with 100,000, but we do expect to get those soon. And we expect to get about 200 of them in the next week. So just another challenge that we're working through, but our team is doing a really great job making sure that we have everything ready for our kids. We did deploy Chromebooks this week at Ukiah High School and Pomalita. I know Pomalita deployed about 500 today out of their close to 800 students. So they're finishing that up tomorrow. And then next week, we'll start the rest of our schools as well as their instructional materials and textbooks. And then we'll get them going with their teachers next week. We're really excited about it, as excited as we can be in a pandemic. And our program is definitely going to be different than the spring. So we'll let Katie talk a little bit about the instructional program. And Katie, your team has also been amazing. The work that you have done, I know you all are very exhausted. The trainings that you've designed, everything that you've done to go above and beyond to support our schools and our kids, I really appreciate it. So I know everybody's really exhausted, and we will get there. We can do it. We've got a great staff. So Katie's going to talk a bit just about the instructional program. Katie is put together a couple of videos also just for the public who are watching this. If you didn't see them on Facebook, please check them out. She does a great job explaining the big picture of our elementary distance learning model and our secondary distance learning model. So Katie, do you want to just show these documents and hit a couple of high points on them?
Sure. So thank you, Superintendent Cuban, and good evening, Board of Trustees. So we've worked very hard on defining our academic program this year in our elementary distance learning model and our secondary distance learning model. And we put together a communication for our parents describing that, because it's very different from last year. So the document that you're going to see here is a brief overview of what distance learning will look like for elementary students. And so one of the biggest changes is that every morning students will get up and log into their classroom morning meeting. So all students will have a morning meeting and start the day that way at their regular time. Attendance will be taken every day. Students will be participating during the regular schedule of the day. And then there are minimum instructional minutes that the state has put out this year. And instruction will include a variety of types of instruction. Some of it will be videos that are pre-recorded, live instruction, online instructional technology instruction, and paper pencil. So all of that will be a variety of instruction. And then you'll see also that we'll be having direct instruction in ELA, ELD, math, small groups. We recognize that that was very important during distance learning, is to be able to have small groups as well, because it's harder to reach students in larger groups online, and to continue our support and interventions. And then social emotional check-ins will be occurring by staff, and counseling will be available. We'll have, we'll talk more about tutoring, and then also office hours. Some of the technologies that we'll be using are Google Classroom. That's our main learning management system. Google Gmail is really important this year because that'll be the main way that assignments, well, not assignments, but the communication of what to do for the day will come out with our Gmail. It's our base communication. We have both Google Meet and Zoom as options to use for classrooms. And then we've purchased some interactive platforms that, especially for our TK through 2, there's a platform called Seesaw that easily allows students to interact with their teacher, send their teacher videos, drawings, assignments. And so it's a really neat interactive way for younger students. And then we've purchased Nearpod for our whole district, which is another way that it interfaces with Google Classroom and allows you to have more interactive lessons and formative assessments through Nearpod and Google Classroom. We also purchased some additional banks with that, lesson banks. So that's the elementary model that we put together, and there's more detail in there. And then the secondary model is similar, except that students will be checking in throughout the day. So when their first period starts, they need to log in to their classroom and have a meeting with their teacher that will be a minimum of 15 minutes of direct instruction. We feel like that's a good amount of time to get students started and give them the direct instruction that they need. And then again, it'll be a mixture of online textbook, paper assignments, projects, videos. There are the minimum instructional minutes of 240 minutes. And the important thing is that teachers also will be communicating through Gmail and their Google Classroom. And then we put some homework guidelines in, up to 20 minutes, up to 45 minutes per class, just so people weren't assigning too much homework. Aries gradebook will be updated weekly because parents need to be able to monitor students and their work. We will also have, teachers will have office hours and to provide support. We'll talk a little bit more about tutoring and social emotional check-ins a little bit later. So that's kind of the overview of our model. We have some more detailed documents, but they're very long. So through the additional funding that we've received through the federal government, we are providing additional academic supports. So we've set aside approximately $1 million for after-school tutoring. Each site will be setting up their additional tutoring and homework support, and it'll be a combination of certificated teachers, classified staff, and as you heard earlier today, students supporting students, which we're really excited about. Office hours are available. One of the things, and all the schools are working tirelessly to figure out their interventions throughout the day and small group instruction. And our ACES program will be running, and the main focus of our ACES program is to check in with students and their families, help them with any homework help that they need throughout the week, and be another connection with an adult. And then lastly, the Ukiah High peer-to-peer mentoring programs that we're talking about before.
And I'll just add, Katie, that we're exploring some ideas with the city of Ukiah on how to use part of our tutoring funding if we can't find enough employees to allocate a portion of that to be able to have the city of Ukiah hire some students in a very formalized way, act as tutors to our students as well. So we are excited about that. Our plan is to offer tutoring in the afternoon after school, and then also in the early evening. So if you're a parent of an elementary student and you're struggling with how to support your student in the math lesson, for example, you could come on with your student onto that tutoring time and get some help to help your student. So we're going to offer it at different times of the day. We also heard a lot last year about how we can increase the social emotional supports of our students, to our students. And I think you've heard me say this every year. This board has been completely committed to providing counseling in our district, across the district. And every year, I think we've increased our counseling support. And every year when we poll people about, is the counseling support adequate? They say, they're even though we're adding more, they still want more. So we think during this time, it's incredibly important to make sure that we are reaching as many students as we can through social and emotional supports. We already have our team, part of our team. We have 6 elementary school counselors, 4 secondary social emotional counselors. We have 3 Title VI counselors supporting Native American students. We have 3 middle school counselors. We have 5 high school deans. We have family liaisons. We have health technicians. And then we also are exploring with community agencies like Redwood Children's Services, Mendocino Youth Project, and Tapestry on how we might be able to contract with them to provide more support. And we'll talk about the budget later, but they would be a critical part of just expanding our support and outreach. The challenge of the funding we're getting is a large chunk of it must be spent by December. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to hire more of our own counselors. It makes more sense to hire, because we'd likely have to lay them off in December. It makes more sense to be able to contract with some of our great community partners to get more social emotional support to our students. So we are in the process of working on that. Katie, do you want to move that forward? Also with social emotional supports, we're going to be using our food program to add some little goodies into their food goodie bags and help brighten their day that way too. So we'll tell you more about that later, because it's kind of a fun little surprise. But we're thinking about ways, and then I'll also just add that getting the connection between the regular classroom teacher and the student really tight very quickly is really our goal. And I think over 200 of our teachers attended the Doug Fisher training, the distance learning playbook. And he talks a lot about creating a warm classroom environment right away with students. So I've already been seeing teachers. I know of a teacher who sent out postcards to her students, welcoming them to her classroom. And on the back of the postcard, she had pictures of herself and what she loves to do. She loves science and her furry friends. And so our teachers are already, even though school has not started, they are already working on getting connected to their students and developing that relationship. So speaking of professional development, Katie and her team put together a lot of optional professional development, and then we have mandatory professional development this week, and I will let Katie talk about that.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, my light keeps going out. I want to start off by saying thank you to the Ed Services Department for putting together all this professional development and trying to figure out how to do it virtually. It was a different way of thinking for us, and I just want to specifically thank Jenny Bailey, Marshall Locatelli, and Sierra Lahara for the trainings that they put together. And I want to thank all the teachers that participated. As Deb said, we had over 200 teachers participate in the distance learning playbook with Doug Fisher. We had a lot of training. Our model was allowing people to participate in video trainings and then have time to collaborate, practice and collaborate. So as you can see in the week of July 31st through the 2nd, we were focusing on rolling out our distance learning model. And it was great because a lot of teachers gave us some feedback around clarifying questions that they had. We had up to 10 hours of technology trainings, and those were pertinent to the core instructional technologies that we would be using. And the teachers had time to do follow-up collaboration and talk about how they would be using those technologies. And then special ed put together their job alikes, and they also had collaborative meetings. In the week of August 3rd through the 8th, I want to thank the Mendocino County Office of Ed for supporting us. We had 2 fabulous trainers come and do our K-5 program, Bridges in Mathematics, in distance learning. And we got really good feedback about the training, and I just want to thank them. We had specific trainings on Seesaw, Nearpod, and Edgenuity. And then again, the distance learning playbook. And then teachers had, after participating in the distance learning playbook, Doug Fisher talked a lot about planning your first month of instruction. And so grade level and content area teams had the opportunity to come together and start planning, mapping out what the most essential standards were for the year, and really getting their first weeks and months ready for distance learning. And again, our special ed department put together site team collaboration and other trainings. There were some other trainings from SELPA. So we had great participation. I want to thank everybody for participating, and we got some good feedback, and we'll be sending out a survey getting more feedback about the training. And then this week has been our professional development, where we have mandatory trainings. I want to thank Jason Iverson for putting together our attendance training. And then teachers again had time to the site-driven distance learning, where they had time to work together. And we also had a training on Edgenuity, which is one of our platforms that provides direct instruction lessons. We're starting to plan even more future training to support teachers. We will have a Nearpod beginning advanced and train the trainer training. And then we're going to continue with the same trainers that we had in Bridges in Mathematics. They'll be having an after school collaborative. And then we brought back our instructional technology leaders. Those are site teachers who are willing to train their colleagues around instructional technology. And so that will be another on-site support around professional development.
Is there one at every school, Katie?
Yes. And we allocate, for our larger schools, we allocate a little bit more. So it's not just one person.
And Katie, I just want to add, express some gratitude to our teachers. They are, as Terry said, they're embracing a lot of new instructional practices, and they are embracing things this fall, and they're ready for the challenge. And I know it's going to be a challenge. I just appreciate everything that they're doing to get ready to be able to support students. And if they have any feedback for us, we always are ready to listen. As always, we're around ready to listen. So thank you so much. We also have worked really hard over the last 5 months to really increase our parent and family communication. I will resume, I should say, my Friday communications to parents. Will do a variety of methods to reach out to parents, including video and Facebook, of course, our website, messages, text messages. So we will continue to do that. Our school sites will continue to communicate. Katie, we put a link into Katie's videos here that she made to educate parents about distance learning. Our website, we have a distance learning tab on our website. Our UUSD Facebook page, we have I have lots of appreciation for our communications officer, Doug Schald, who has very much increased our following on our Facebook page. And then if parents they can't get a response, they can also always call our distance learning hotline at 5003. And in terms of our evaluation of our program, in about a month, we will be reaching out to parents to get feedback so we can see if we need to make any adjustments. So that's our communication plan. We will continue to feed students in Ukiah Unified. This summer, we were operating under a program that that we could feed any student, any child in our community. And now we are shifting back to our traditional program, which is what we're required to do, where we are only feeding our students who are enrolled in Ukiah Unified. So other families who are not enrolled, you should reach out to your school site to find out what their plan is. So we will be giving 5 days worth of breakfast and lunch. We are doing food from one location. It worked out extremely well this summer. We'll continue to monitor that with our families. We actually increased our service this summer, and we serve between 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Wednesday. We've expanded our hours so that we can meet the needs of working parents. And food will always include fresh milk, proteins, whole grains, fresh fruits. And again, some of that is subject to availability. We've been partnering with the USDA with food boxes. And when that's available, we will certainly get it out to families. And for families who are at home under quarantine, we will definitely deliver meals to our families. We want to remind families that if children should not be picking up meals during normal school hours, we would like you to be in class, please. And we want to make sure that parents have their children's student ID numbers with them. We've been communicating that out to parents as well. So that is the summary of our meal distribution. And program evaluation, we're almost finished, and then we'll take questions.
Deb, can I go back to one thing I forgot to thank? We had a group of teachers participate in the distance learning playbook to vet the training, and I just really want to say thank you to them. They were so helpful. So I just want to put a little shout out to the folks that helped us with that.
So program evaluation, you all have seen the expectations of our distance learning program, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank our bargaining teams for making sure that we have very high expectations in our program. And so we are partnering with Hanover Research to do an evaluation of our distance learning plan. And so they'll be doing an operations survey in the fall, about a month into the school year, and also in the spring. And the good part of this is they will populate those results into a live dashboard so we can get our feedback right away. And there won't be a delay in us making any adjustments to our program. They'll also do some interviews with students, parents, and guardians and staff, so we can get feedback that way. They will also be looking at student participation in the learning by subgroup. So we'll get some really good information. And by the way, the board will get all of this. We'll present the results at a board meeting for the public. And then they're also going to be looking at student performance on academic and behavioral outcome data by subgroup as well. So a month into the school year, and then in the spring again. We also have remote work agreements with our employees, and some distance learning expectations so that we have consistency across our district and across our classrooms, and for our school leaders as well. And then we will be doing monthly board updates on distance learning, just so we can give you the progress. I mean, truthfully, I really hope that we're not doing distance learning all year. It's a fun adventure, but we know that kids learn best in front of a teacher in person. And so we really hope that as soon as we can, we are able to return to some sort of in-person instruction when our public health officer allows that to happen. So anyway, that is program evaluation. And Katie, are we at questions?
Yes.
Yes, questions. So Katie, do you want to stop your screen share so the board can see each other?
Trustee Nelson.
I am wondering, when I was reading through the presentation, under several of the headings, the same thought kept recurring. One of them, let me just see. Does after-school tutoring include? Okay, so after-school tutoring, And there was another topic, another title called student supports. Are there mechanisms in there for the kids that are having a hard time showing up to be called by their teachers, by their counselors? I mean, do we have their phone numbers? Is that mechanism in place?
Yes, and we are required, and next month you will be seeing our learning continuity plan. That is a new plan that's required by the state. And part of the requirements there, it's called a re-engagement plan, a student re-engagement plan. And so Katie can talk a bit about that. There are 3 different tiers to the plan. And Katie, do you want to give a little detail on that?
Sure. So the state is requiring that districts have a re-engagement plan, and that's composed of 3 tiers. Any student who is absent 3 or more days out of the week gets put into tier 1. And then, obviously there's a tiered response due to the number of absences. And part of that is to ensure that students are engaging in distance learning, and that's a team effort. So many of those people that were on the slide that talked about counseling supports, the health techs, the liaisons, the counselors, the assistant principals, they're all part of a team that when students aren't responding, they will be part of a team that reaches out to those students. So one thing, Tyler, that's really important too is that parents update their Aries portal, parent portal, that we have good, accurate information, because sometimes we know it could be that a student's not engaging because they're having a technology issue. It could be that they may be having a health issue. That's why our health techs are so imperative. So that is what we'll be bringing to you in our learning continuity plan around that tiered engagement.
Does that address your question, Trustee Nelson?
Are there?
It does. It does. It's going to be super challenging. I'm glad there's that component that is part of the program. I just had one of my employees after the workday. She's nervous, and so I'm glad you guys are there to support those kids.
I'll also say, Trustee Nelson, to our parents out there, I know how nervous everybody is. I am a parent of 3 teenagers in my household, and it's quite daunting, but I just want you to know that we're there to support you too. So if you're struggling in any way, you need to reach out to your school site, and then our next layer of support is our district office. So you are not alone in this process. We are all in this together, and we are here to support parents too.
Thank you. Trustee Van Sant?
I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm going to try to organize them a little bit, and I'm going to couch my thoughts on both ends with, I can tell a lot of work has gone into distance learning preparations. I'm, excited about the difference in quality that we're going to see this fall versus what was able to be kind of hastily assembled in the spring. I can tell there's a lot that's going to be different. And I appreciate all the all the work that teachers and staff are doing to get ready for this new learning model. I can see there's a ton of professional development that has happened. I know people are working hard to try to figure out how to make this work. That being said, when I look at this system that we're designing, as a parent, my heart sinks. And I am really concerned that aside from the district learning part, distance learning part, aside from the curriculum that the teachers are going to provide to the students, those students that are going to need the most support beyond just being able to, hold it together themselves, are going to be the ones whose parents are going to be the least able to be there, call that counselor, and be there and take advantage of that ACES tutoring or whatever it is. I mean, that's going to require a parent next to them all day long, in a sense, if we're talking about younger kids. And I think about my highly functional household, and I think I don't even know how I would be able to take advantage of these supports. So I guess what I'm hoping is that we can open up the way we're thinking about providing extra support to kids and those that are not engaging, those ones you're identifying in tier 1. And I'm thinking maybe there's other tiers, but you only got to tier 1. But those kids that are not engaging, our public health officer does allow interaction with students. I mean, you're allowed to have a stable group of 10. I mean, you're allowed to talk to people in real life in our current public health order. And I guess I wish we could see if there was ways, maybe not right away, because I understand it's going to take us about a month or more to really understand how this could work. But I guess I'm not understanding why our ACES staff couldn't do groups of 5 kids and tutoring after school socially distanced in our cafeterias. I guess I'm not understanding why we couldn't support, for example, in Hopland, if the tribe wanted to hire a tutor who could do day-long, childcare in a sense with kids who were engaging in that learning, we couldn't pay that person to do that work. I just really feel like I feel like attention needs to be paid to the parents' ability to access the learning. We're going to have great curriculum that's going to be really exciting, and we're going to have families that are going to have children home alone who won't be able to access it. And I'm just not sure that phone calls to the family are going to be successful. So I'm hoping that we can leave room that in a month we can really see what's working, because I want us to be really aggressive about trying to support kids in other ways besides through Zoom and phone calls, because I think they're going to need it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what I feel like we're doing is creating this awesome distance learning curriculum and this really great teaching that's going to be delivered in this format that literally many of our families won't be able to access.
Superintendent,
I didn't mean to be a total downer on it, but I mean, at the same time, I think it's super important to be positive. I'm excited to see what my kid's going to, experience starting on Monday. I think it's also incumbent upon us to speak the truth about how impossible this is going to be for so many of our families. And I'm saying that based on my, my own thoughts about how it's going to be impossible for me, but we'll make it work out. My employees that I work with, like Tyler said, are like thinking, I don't literally know how I'm going to be able to do this. So I guess I'm just putting that out there so that we can continue to keep that in the forefront of our minds at all times, that finding a way to safely get kids back in front of actual people is going to be necessary, particularly for our most vulnerable kids, but eventually for everybody, as soon as we possibly can, and whatever avenues we can find to do that.
Superintendent Kuhn, maybe you could just before we go on to anything else, maybe you could just address that, because I know that you've already started to plan on when you're going to start looking at those other mechanisms.
Yeah, we're just trying to get the plane to take off on Monday. And then after we get the plane to take off, we will be looking at other things. I'm really hopeful that we can provide some, small group on campus, in person, maybe through ACES or something else eventually, especially for our kids without internet. We know we will have kids where our hotspots will not reach where they live because they live way out, and there will not be instruction. So we really want to try and focus a lot there. And then I'm also really interested in being able to figure out how we can provide some conditioning programs, athletic conditioning programs, for example, to get kids outside, like the city of Ukiah is doing in their rec programs. So our plan is to get the plane off the ground and then start thinking about those things.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Van Sant. No, I thought you had other points that you wanted to bring up.
I do have a point about the social emotional counseling, but I know it is overlapped in the budget hearing, so I'll just put it out here now, and we can have maybe another conversation in the budget hearing. I'm not personally comfortable with allocating $1 million to contracting out social emotional counseling. When I look at that slide, I see 20 people whose job duties have changed drastically, and it feels to me like we should at least see if they're able to support those kids through their time and their day before we contract out with other providers, particularly since it will still be by phone. It will still require the parent to set it up. And many of those providers are able to bill Medi-Cal for it. So they have a funding source to provide counseling to kids. So to me, that one's not resonating as something that makes a ton of sense. Maybe after you get the plane off the ground, it will make more sense, but I'm not comfortable with that. When I look at that dollar amount and I break it down, it's 9 people at $100 an hour, and I just picked that out of nowhere, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day. So, I mean, that's a huge amount of, I can't see how that really will meet the need in the format we have to provide it, which is through phones and Zoom and all of that. So for me, I'd rather delay on that and see how the things unroll before we commit to that. I understand there's a time crunch to spend money. I've been in situations too before where it's like, spend all this money right now. And I just think it's really important to kind of take whatever time we can to really think it through before we decide it. That's just my opinion. It may not be shared by other board members.
Okay, thank you. Katie, could you go back and just give us a quick definition in the re-engagement plan of what tiers 2 and 3 are?
I don't have that prepared right now. I need to go pull that up, but I can.
That's okay. Maybe you could just send it to us.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just don't have it with me.
No, that's fine. Superintendent Cuban?
I just wanted to respond to the counseling. I cannot tell you how many people have reached out to us about counseling and how the great need that is out there for counseling in our community with our kids. It was the biggest topic of my conversations with parents in the spring in all my Zoom calls, and great concerns about kids and their social emotional well-being. So that's why we're recommending that we commit so many dollars, because it has been articulated to us that that's what the need is.
I would totally agree that the social emotional impact on kids is going to be enormous, absolutely enormous and devastating. I'm just not sure counseling through a contract with private providers is the way to meet that need. I would say some of the things like doing conditioning and training, having them opportunities to get out and see their friends and to do that might have the same impact on their social emotional health than a phone call with a counselor they don't know who also could get Medi-Cal billing for it. So I guess that's just where I totally agree with the need that this is going to have a devastating social emotional impact on kids. I'm just wondering what the best strategy is to address that, given especially since we have 20 staff that we've already identified that have time to devote to that as well. But again, I'm okay being like the only one thinking this doesn't totally make sense yet, and I could be wrong. I'm totally open to being wrong as well.
Trustee Nelson?
I just wanted to, this ACES concept I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't know that we could actually run the ACES program still in person. I appreciate that we're trying to get the airplane off the ground and continues to be challenging. But so we can't have an ACES program. Can we run it all day long? Can it be a 7 or an 8 hour ACES program?
No, it can't supplant the school day.
What if it supports the school day? I mean, and so you have 5 kids or 10 kids, assuming you can get it staffed, that sit there with kids and their Chromebooks and make sure that classwork's getting done.
It seems like the instruction in that case would still be provided by the teachers. There's no instruction being provided by the ACES staff, right? Tyler,
that was kind of what I was wondering.
I don't think we have the funding, Tyler, to support something like that. I mean, but we can ask the state CDE regarding the use of those funds during the regular school day. But I just would really love I mean, we can explore that, but I have to tell you that where we're focused right now is on Monday.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that tremendously, but
we don't meet for a month.
About the future.
So yeah, we don't meet for a month. So yeah, but we don't expect anybody to make a call to the state before, later next week. Other questions? Trustee Fernandez.
I had a question about the homework. I've had a couple parents ask me for clarification. This was junior high and high school level. The 40 minutes a day per period for high school, is that including AP and honors, or is that just a baseline for non-AP honors classes, or is that?
Yeah, it's a baseline. It does not mean they need to assign that many. What we wanted to make sure were that teachers weren't assigning too much homework.
So it said 2. It
It's
says up to
up to.
45 minutes.
So does that include like the AP and the honors classes?
It does.
And so I've had some parents, I mean, obviously as we're figuring this out and as teachers are figuring it out, no one really knows how things will go or how much time will take because it's all new for everybody. But if parents find that their child is doing more than the 40 minutes per class, should they say something, or is it, I'm wondering, is that something people are going to be looking at? Are the teachers going to be sort of aware that they need to calibrate that as this is all new, particularly the high school with the 4x4 schedule?
And Zoe, I would say for any parent who has any concerns ever about their child's education, they should first call the teacher and then talk to the school site administrator for sure on anything, including homework. And our staff has seen the distance learning models with that in there.
Okay. Yeah, there's a learning curve for everything, and this is definitely going to be new for teachers, for students. I mean, it's going to be a new version, so it's going to definitely require some trial and error, I'm sure.
Well, and there is time built into the class period for independent practice. So, you know, if the high school period is 90 minutes and a teacher does a lesson for, 15 or 20 minutes and they do some guided learning together, there still will likely be time for independent practice or homework. And the teacher can stay on and help students who need extra help. So they can get a jump start on that as well. Depends on how the teacher structures that period, but that is the concept behind it.
And then my other question was with the elementary and the 3 days, if you miss 3 days, then you get on the list. What if school starts at 8 o'clock and a kid's not logging on till 10 o'clock? I know there's tardies in regular school. What happens online school if kids are late or they come from 8:30 to 9 and then they're gone for the rest of the day? What constitutes an absence?
Do you want the state definition?
No, I'm wanting our definition, which hopefully
the state has said if you attend, if you have a live interaction, you get attendance credit. But we want kids on at 8. That's when they're going to do their morning meeting. And we don't want them to be 2 hours late. They will miss vital learning during that time. So it would be like a tardy coming to school.
And will we be monitoring that, I guess is what I wonder, because if we have somebody who comes on for 15 minutes every day and then that's it, that's obviously not going to work. I mean, they would technically be there, but they're not going to be learning.
And we do have an attendance policy. It's been really tricky getting definitions from the state on that. Steve has had to work with our auditors because there's not really clear guidance on how it's going to work. And so we want to make sure when we get audited that we don't lose all of our funding because we have not done it correctly. It's very different. It's very, it's through a combination of live interaction, and an email is not considered a live interaction. So a phone call is, but an email is not. And work completion. And teachers are assigning time to work that is completed. And there has to be a minimum number of instructional minutes between live.
So maybe a combination of those.
Yeah, live instruction and independent and work time accounting. It's very different.
Trustee Arkin, and then Barrett.
So I don't have a question, but I do want to say that, Deb, I really appreciate you thanking everybody who has been working their booty off to try and make this as successful as possible under the circumstances. We all know this is not ideal. This is not what any of us want. We all want to be able to have our kids in the classroom. There's no doubt about that, especially for the board, but everybody, nobody wants anybody sick. But thank you for thanking everyone. I thank everyone, but I especially thank you, Deb, and your administration. You've worked tirelessly constantly. You had no vacation, nothing. You've been doing it, and I really, really appreciate the hard work that you have all done. And you are thinking of all the possibilities that could go wrong. And I appreciate Megan thinking of these things, and Zoe, and I really am of the belief that we have to get the plane off the ground. Once we get the plane off the ground, we're going to learn a lot of stuff. And yes, we don't want to learn the awful things, but that's going to happen. We're also going to learn the good things. And we're going to revise things. And we're going to make shifts. And that's what this is about. There's lots of things that can go wrong and lots of things that can go right. And the good and bad part for you, Deb, is I know the minute it happens, you're going to be right in there and try to work it, try to fix it. Nicole, all of you, it's crazy. You guys, I mean, you'll be running around going crazy again, or still. That's a better word. But I really appreciate it. I know you're working hard. We all know you're working hard. I'm not as I want to see what's going to happen and go from there. I think we're going to learn a lot, and we can't anticipate everything. I know you're trying to, Deb, and I appreciate that. But it'll be, and it will be, I know it will be fine, and we're going to work hard in every way possible to get our kids back to school, because that's the bottom line. And just thank you.
And B, thank you so much. I mean, there are so many unanswered questions that we deal with every day. Our school site administrators, my heart goes out to all of them and everybody on our admin team. I mean, it's nothing like I've ever experienced in my 29 years in education. And, you know, I appreciate your faith in us, and we are doing our best under really crazy circumstances.
Thank you.
Trustee Barrett.
Yes, just a quick question. Were you able, Katie, to reach out to the Native American communities to see if they had any plans in their education centers, or could they work with their students there?
Scott is working with the individual tribes. They've been discussing about what type of support we can do, but I don't have a detailed plan for you yet on that, Carolyn.
Okay, I was just wondering if you'd had the opportunity. And I would like to say thank you to everyone also. I know this has been incredibly difficult, and next week is going to be a challenge. So we'll all have our fingers crossed and be wishing good thoughts.
I just wanted to ask if on the, because we've all heard the concerns or we've experienced the concern of social emotional delays and difficulties during this time, could you include both quantitative and qualitative data of some sort, nothing that's not already being collected, but when you give us the distance learning update, could you make sure to include some of that data as well?
Around counseling supports?
Correct. And my other question was, you had some trainers at the beginning of the year who had clearly had expertise in distance learning. And I'm wondering, do you plan on using them at all for continuing mentoring work? For example, to observe a teacher giving a class over Zoom and then give feedback. I mean, we can all give feedback to each other, but feedback's usually a lot better when it comes with somebody with some expertise, like the people who were doing the initial training at the beginning of the year, like you were mentioning.
You mean at the beginning of the summer, or?
No, you just mentioned in the last 2 weeks, there were a number of groups that you had gotten good reviews about a number of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Anne.
Sorry, I wasn't.
That's an interesting idea to have those folks actually be part, come into classrooms. We haven't organized that, but I'll write that down. That's a really good idea.
It's one of the few times where we're going to have enough money to just hire people to do a job. It doesn't happen very often. So, yeah, I mean, as we're building our own expertise, I'm sure we will be building our own expertise, but if somebody else already has it, let's not wait. So that, and then I don't know if we want to talk about food now or during the budget, food distribution. What's your preference?
Now is fine.
Okay, so we talked about this on the phone, Deb, or Superintendent Cuban, that I'm concerned about not getting food out beyond Ukiah Unified. And I'm especially concerned because when we look at places in poverty, the richest place in our district is probably right where the high school is. And so I'm concerned that we're not delivering anywhere else. And I know you looked at this, but I'm wondering if we couldn't look at it again, just to try and think if there's anything creative, if there's other delivery services nearby with refrigeration, or if any of the tribes could, we could pay them to deliver to other tribes if one of them already has a refrigerated truck or something. It doesn't seem like it could be that expensive considering all that the funds we have coming in for right now.
Steve, can you address that as to why we made the decision that we made to do centralized?
Sure. We saw a lot of trouble in the spring with trying to deliver. We could not get the same quality and caliber of food and the same quantities out on the routes. It was just really difficult. We had to do a lot of more shelf-stable products, such as shelf-stable milk rather than fresh milk. That's not the product we want to deliver in a perfect world. So we did really wrestle with this decision, and we felt like the numbers we saw at the high school this summer gave us enough confidence to think we can at least start the year this way. We served on average 1,813 children each week during the summer. We did over 271,000 meals during the 10 weeks to the children. So, I mean, the food service folks really did an amazing job this summer. And we believe with that 12-hour window at the high school, folks can get there. Obviously, we can adjust on the fly if we need to, but that's how we thought it was best to start the year, especially while it's hot. Once the weather cools off, it's a little easier to deliver food. When it's this hot, like it's supposed to be 102, I think next Wednesday, it's kind of hard to get refrigerated food out on a delivery truck and do it well and do it safely.
I'll just add Pleasant View Dairy. They are just amazing. They park a milk truck, a refrigerated milk truck on the high school campus, and we give every student a gallon of milk. And so that's one of the benefits of being able to do centralized food pickup.
And can you remind me, and I understand why this is the case, but you can't pick up for another kid? Like I couldn't pick up for my friend who's at work?
We are going to be asking for parents or whoever's picking up for the student's ID.
So if you have their ID number.
If you have the student's ID, be able to pick up.
So if somebody from Hopland or kind of organized themselves to go pick up for 5 or 6 kids, they could do that?
Absolutely.
We do have that happening.
Okay.
Trustee Fernandez?
I was wondering, I see sometimes on Facebook that people are offering up their macaroni and cheese that they have a bunch of in the freezer or something like that. If somebody wants some of the food but not all, are they allowed to say, I'd like the milk and this, but not that item? Or is it just sort of, you need to take it all?
For us to meet the USDA guidelines and be able to count it as a reimbursable meal, we have to distribute all the pieces. We can't just pick and choose. The USDA boxes are optional and they're outside of those meal requirements. So you can pick and choose if you want the boxes. We know a lot of folks, the 3rd or 4th week they got those boxes, they were like, no more, thank you. My fridge and freezer are full, which is totally understandable. But in terms of the meals that we provide outside of the USDA boxes, you have to take everything.
Sort of like the cafeteria line. You got to get your vegetables.
To be a reimbursable meal, you have to have all the components.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a way to figure out without too much time how many kids from what areas are getting the food? I mean, we know that we have 70 to 80% of the kids who would qualify for the old free and reduced lunch program. But I'm afraid that the kids that are farther away might not be getting it. Is there any way to determine that? Do the numbers get written down just by hand, or?
No, we'll be putting them into our point of sale system. Hopefully that's the goal. Then once we
Oh,
start
excellent.
having actual data, we've already talked about how can we plot that data? How can we see where the kids are coming from to get the meals and what areas are not getting served? And that would help us make some data-driven decisions going forward as well.
Fabulous. So by the September meeting, could we have just an initial report, even if it is not for the 4 weeks between now and September, even if it's only for the last week, because that's the only one you've been able to plot the data for?
I'm not sure how quickly we can get that data plotted, but we will definitely try.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Other questions about the distance learning update educational program?
And I know I'm on a roll of gratitude. Oh, sorry.
Trustee
I was just going to say, I too really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Obviously, we were thinking that it was going to maybe be hybrid, and then we had to suddenly change, and which changed everything. And it seems like you have very robust training for our teachers. You've thought of lots and lots of details. I'm sure there are more details that you'll discover because that's how this works. But I just want to thank everybody, the administration, the teachers, everyone who's been working on this. And I want to say, not related to our district, but my sister who lives in Sacramento area, her kids started school today with remote learning, and her youngest is in a multi-age K2 class, and they had a breakout session on Zoom, and 10 minutes in the breakout session, there were 8 kindergartners sitting there, and the teacher didn't make it to the breakout session. So there were all the kids on their Zoom with no teacher as their first day of kindergarten, not knowing what to do until a parent said, you're on the wrong Zoom to the teacher. It was just a funny reminder of, even though you have things all laid out and you expect them to go one way, they don't always, and there'll be a lot of trial and error, I'm sure, as those things will happen.
You betcha. Superintendent?
I was just going to add some gratitude. Our food service staff is also remarkable. And when I think about everything that our bus drivers and our food service staff did last spring to get food out, it was just amazing. Quickly transitioned. And we are doing food deliveries to families that are quarantined. So we just aren't sending our buses out. But I really appreciate our food service staff, Linnea, Julie, our whole crew there. They work really hard, and they take a lot of joy and pleasure in feeding our community.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay. Oh, Trustee Van Seen.
Sorry, just one comment. I'm really happy to see the Hanover Research distance learning evaluation. I think that's really great, and I'm just really glad that I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a really good idea, and I'm glad we're going to have that outside look that's going to be looking at this throughout the whole period of distance learning. I think it's be really important. So thank you for doing that.
Well, the nice thing is that they requested it back in March when we first started with all this nonsense. So that's great. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. It is 8:11, so we will come back at 8:16. Thank you.
We are taking a 5-minute recess.
Ian, are we back on?
We lost trustee Arkin at some point. I haven't seen her come back, and I don't see anybody else unmuting or unmuting their video.
Here everybody comes. Okay, we think B kind of fell off, so we'll wait just a moment. Ms. Ornelas, could you give B. Arkin a call, please?
Sorry, guys.
Oh, no problem. Just didn't want to get started without you because we know how much you want to talk about the 45-day budget plan.
You are right. Thank you.
I thought so. Okay, Ian, are we back on YouTube?
Yes, we are back on YouTube.
Thank you. So we are resuming our meeting of the Ukiah Unified School Board this August 13th. We are on agenda item E, Operational Systems, E1, 2021 45-day budget revised based on the state enacted budget. All right. So Mr. Barrickman, you will be presenting.
All right, good evening. I will try to do a share screen as well.
Thank you.
Always interesting. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Awesome. I love it when the technology works. Okay. All right, well, good evening. So tonight we come to you with a 45-day budget revision. This is kind of an unusual thing. I honestly think in my 15th or 16th year of doing this, this is the first time I've done one of these. We don't even have a tool from the state to do this. And the state gives us a tool for everything, or a form to fill out, or a spreadsheet to fill out, or something. We have nothing for this. So, but it is driven by the fact that the state's budget changed so much from May revision, which we used to build our budget in June, to the actual June budget they adopted. So that's why we're here tonight. And we're going to go ahead and take the opportunity, since we're talking about our budget anyway, to dive into the COVID-related funds, because we didn't really talk about those in June because it was too early. So, all right, with that, we will jump in. Easy for me to say. Okay, so the significant changes to the budget since June, which seems like a long time ago. I don't know if you guys remember that June budget presentation. It was a while ago. We were hit with a 10% reduction to the COLA, to the local control funding formula, which, as you may recall, had pretty devastating impact to our budget in all 3 years that we talked about in the multi-year projections. Happily, at least for the time being, that has gone away. That was eliminated in the final budget that was enacted after we adopted our budget in June. We do have some other revenue transfer and contribution changes because of that, and because of some other reasons to talk about. We are still working on closing the books for 1920. You'll notice in your packet, you had two different documents. You had the presentation, then you had our multi-year spreadsheets. I'm not going to present the multi-year spreadsheets tonight, except to talk about the summary a little bit, but you will see that there were some highlighted fields in the different years. That's because we have been actively trying to close the books since we last met in June. And then perhaps most importantly for tonight's presentation, we're going to talk about the learning loss mitigation funds and other pandemic related funds and how they affect our budget. Okay, so the elimination of the 10% LCFF reduction, you can see what that meant just for our district. You can see that means an extra $5 million to us in 2020-21 and just over $5 million again in 21-22 and 22-23. So you can see, and I'm not sure if you can see my pointer or not, but our base grant for this year increased by $6.3 million. Part of that is a $2.3 million shift from the education protection account funding. So it's really just a paper transfer, but the other $4 million is new money that we were not expecting back in June. You see our supplemental and concentration grant, our SCG grant, increased by almost $2 million, and our transportation budget increased by $70,000. Those are all good things for our budget, right? And you see that that carries over into the multi-year based on the assumptions we have from the state now. So back in June, the state assumed a 10% reduction and then assumed flat funding in the multi-year. Now they're assuming no reduction for this year and flat funding for the multi-year. Now, realistically, I don't know that that's really what we'll see in 21-22 and 22-23. At some point, the state has to figure out some way to balance its budget, but for now, that's what we know and what we can assume. And then moving on. So back in May and June, we spent a lot of time paring down our SCG budget, our supplemental and concentration grant budget, because we had to reduce because we had lost a bunch of money. Well, now we've added back in that almost $2 million. So administration and the leadership team got together and said, okay, of the things we reduced, what does it make sense to add back to our SCG budget based on how we're rolling out our educational programs for this fall? And so you see the green highlighted fields are things we thought we could add back with this extra money. We had eliminated $49,000 to purchase library books. We think we can add that back. We can always use library books. And I don't have to go through every line item here. Let me just go through some of the bigger ones, but $50,000 for art materials for the sites. The sites have said, hey, even though we're doing distance learning, we still need art materials to get to the kids. So we wanted to put that back. $100,000 in school safety funds. It's so important to keep reinvesting in our facilities, even though we aren't using them to their full extent right now. So we want to add that money back. And then you see some other items as well. So you see those expense increases total $247,500. Well, our SCG total increase was $1.2 million. So that still leaves $927,000 unallocated. For the time being, we would like to keep that unallocated. Again, we think there are reductions coming in the multi-year. We just don't know how and when. So any money we can put aside now will help us in the future. If we see a need to come back and spend some more of this money this year, we'll come back to you and do a budget revision and talk to you about it then. Also, there are some things in our supplemental and concentration grant funding, part of our plan, may not actually happen, right? We may have put in there a position that we can't fill, or we may have put in a program that we decided not to pilot because of the distance learning. Those funds will fall into the unallocated category as well and just carry over to the following year. Some other 2020-21 changes. We've already found out from SELPA, we're going to get $120,000 less for 2020-21 than we thought. Special education is already underfunded significantly, so losing another $120,000 is not great news for us. As you'll see on the very next line, that means we have to increase our contribution to special ed by that $120,000 plus a little bit more. We can reduce our contribution to transportation because the transportation revenue increased, so that's a good thing. Now, one of the unintended consequences of all of this one-time money we're getting from the state and the federal government to fight the pandemic is that we have to increase our contribution to routine restricted maintenance. We have to contribute 3% out of our unrestricted general fund to maintenance, 3% of our total expenditures on the entire general fund. Well, our entire general fund has gone up by $6 or $7 million because of these one-time funds. So that carries a one-time hit to our contribution to routine restricted maintenance as well. One of the one of the programs we did not fund initially for 2020-21 was the Safety and Equipment and Vehicles Fund that we typically fund to $100,000 each year. We'd like to recommend restoring those funds, again, to keep investing in ourselves, just like we did with the Supplemental Concentration Grant. These funds are always in demand. We always have more demands from the sites than we have money each year. So we'd like to keep funding that if we could. Otherwise, we want to eliminate some of those other transfers in we had made. If you recall, back in June, we were borrowing money from other programs where we'd already set aside money to help us fill that gap from the state. $186,000 from deferred maintenance, $790,000 from facilities, and almost $2.7 million from what we put aside for textbooks. We would like to not use those funds this year at this point. We may need them next year, we may need them 2 years from now, but at least not for now, we don't have to have them, so we'd like to put them back. So finally, kind of rolling what the multi-year looks like with all this information, you can see we're still projecting to finish 2019-20 with 11.62% reserves. We'll have the final number for you next month, and we'll bring that to you in September. As of right now, based on all the assumptions we've talked about, we'll have 7.69% in reserves at the end of 2021. I think by the time we finish closing 19-20, and as we sharpen the pencil on the 2021 budget, that will get back up over that 9%. But if not, we would have to reduce expenditures by a little over $1 million to maintain our 9% reserve. For 2021-22, we'd have to cut another $22,000 to get back to having that entire 9% reserve. And for 22-23, we'd have to cut over another $1 million to get that 9%. Again, that's based on a set of assumptions that were done back in May and June and now. So a lot's going to change between now and then. And while it seems like we might need to cut a lot of money based on these numbers, if you go back and look at the June budget presentation, we are in much better shape. We had projected to have to cut $3.9 million in 21-22 to maintain a 9% reserve. Now we're saying $1 million this year and $22,000 next year, much better than $3.9 million. For 22-23, we would have to cut another $2.4 million just to have a 3% reserve, and another $4.3 million to maintain that 9% reserve. So 1 million versus 6.6 million is a much better place to be. So again, things have improved just by that 10% reduction going away. Okay, with that, I'm ready to dive into the COVID, the pandemic related funds. Does it make sense to take any questions on this first, or should we just go ahead and keep rolling?
Yeah, if there's any questions so far, board members? Okay, seeing none, keep going.
Okay, all right. Get my screen shared again, hopefully here. Okay, so moving on to the COVID related funds. So this slide gives you an overview of all the different pots of money we're receiving. Back in the spring, we knew about this $99,000 we were getting from the state to help us with our response. So at first, we threw everything we were buying in terms of PPE, in terms of cleaning supplies, cleaning equipment, we threw everything into this because it was the only money we had. Well, since then, you can see a lot's changed. So this is probably the least restrictive money we have. So we're going to try to move a lot of our expenditures out of these more restrictive programs as we close the books. The next line is the Federal CARES Act ESSER funds, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. You see we're getting almost $1.4 million there, and we have until September of 22 to spend those funds. Next, we have all the learning loss mitigation funds, and this is where it gets a little more interesting. The Federal CARES Act through the Coronavirus Relief Fund is giving us over $5.5 million with a very quick December 30th spending deadline. Also part of the learning loss is a contribution from Prop 98 of the state's general fund, another $536,000. Again, that has to be spent by December 30th. And then finally from the Federal CARES Act is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief, or GEAR funds, another $347,000 that we have until September of 22 to spend. So learning loss mitigation funds themselves add up to $6.4 million, and in total, all the pandemic related funds, $7.9 million. Just over $6 million of which has to be spent by December 30th. Now there's a chance, we're hearing rumblings that that deadline may get extended. I hope it does. Otherwise you see some really crazy spending on things that don't necessarily are the right decisions, right? I don't want to spend the money for the sake of spending the money. I want to do things that make the most sense for distance learning, for hybrid learning, for returning to school safely. So hopefully that deadline does get relaxed. So with that, we'll dive into the coronavirus relief funds. That's the $5.5 million largest bucket. So I don't know if you want to walk through this line by line, or if you want to take a few minutes to look at each slide. I'm open to suggestion. It's pretty detailed. It gives you everything we've identified thus far, down to some $500 spending lines. Or some, in this case, there's a $2,500 line for some mobile manager licenses for students for iPads. $210,000 for looking at getting webcams in every camera. That's something that the board did approve back in July. We tried to make notes here of things that have already been board approved. We'll have a little footnote on them. You see student headphones with microphones to support distance learning, $155,000. That's another item that's heavily impacted. Trying to get those from the vendors is very difficult. We were able to actually source some finally, which was great, and those should be arriving pretty soon, I believe. Student Chromebook, cameras and other tech needs, another $105,000. Again, technology is a really important piece in all this, and so the spending will reflect a lot of that. Moving to the next page, more coronavirus relief funds. You see after school evening tutoring. You'd approved $250,000 back in July. We've increased that to $1 million. We think that's really important for our students and their families, as we've talked about earlier this evening. Some other big ticket items, $175,000 for Edgenuity, a really key piece of software that you'd already approved for us to be moving forward. The additional community liaison, family community liaison, to help deal with all the different COVID related issues, another $80,000 that you already approved. Moving to the third and final page of coronavirus relief funds. Again, $250,000 for professional development that you approved back in July. Almost $1.3 million for all the extra PD we did in July and August, plus some PD that we'll do in the future. A lot of other big ticket items here. The take-home kits for secondary students, they're $93,000, things like that. Okay, any questions on the coronavirus relief funds before I move to the next pot of money?
Steve, go ahead, Superintendent Cuban.
I just wanted to add on the take-home kits. We have those for elementary and secondary students. These are materials and supplies that they will need at home. So we're trying to send everything home with them that they might need. So they don't have to go and, you know, they're less likely to have to go buy things.
Right. And the theory is if and when they get to come back on site, we'll have another set waiting for them here. This set is for them to keep at home in the event we do go to hybrid. They'll have a kit in both places that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Trustee Fernandez.
I had a question. I remember in a letter we received from a teacher earlier this summer, she was talking about not having a functional laptop at school, and she used her computer at home, and she said if she worked at school she wouldn't have a modern laptop, I think is what she called, or something like that. And I'm wondering, I see a lot of Chromebooks for students. Are we making sure that all teachers and all teachers have the laptops? I'm sorry, my brain is freezing up. Have the technology they need, the actual computers they need for whether that's for special ed or for a regular classroom or for intervention or what? Do they all have what they need, or being taken care of?
Yes, they have computers that they can take home for sure.
No, I don't necessarily mean to take home, but I mean, this teacher was saying her computer at school that she had was terrible, so she was using her home computer. In those cases, are we making sure that teachers have the technology, the actual computers that they need, whether or not they're at school or at home?
Yes, they should have what they need, absolutely.
And if they don't, like this teacher didn't, clearly, there's a way for them to get that?
They need to talk to their school site administrator, and they'll work with their tech person at their school site.
And
Yes,
when
that would
there's,
definitely be a priority.
but if for any reason their school site administrator, hedges thinking that she doesn't have the funding for it,
We clearly do.
what should our response be? Yeah. Besides call Deb on her cell phone. We don't want to say that to everybody.
They can always email us for certain at the district.
Or they can call me on my cell phone. That's fine.
But we do definitely want our staff to have what they need at
Absolutely.
to be able to do their jobs for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason teacher technology should be a barrier at all.
Right, not with this budget.
Right.
Even
Trustee
without.
Van Sant?
I have a couple questions. What is COVID-19 compliant flexible collaborative furniture?
So that's a great question. You're going to see that line item in several places. So there was a move over the last several years to go towards collaborative furniture, where the kids could all sit together and work together, right? That was such a great, wonderful thing. It made so much sense. And then the virus hit. So a lot of the furniture that we had purchased is adaptable and flexible to where it can be put together or broken apart, not literally broken apart, but separated to the individual student desks. But some of our older furniture cannot do that. We have multi-student desks still. We have 2 student desks that cannot be split apart. So one of the ideas that we thought of that'd be really important with some of this money is to get flexible furniture that can be per individual student, but can be moved together and collaborate nicely with their peers when we get back to a more normal environment. So that's one of the things, again, if we're trying to meet a spending deadline and trying to get kids back to school, this might be a really good way to do that.
I appreciate that, and I'm actually, I mean, I know you need to finish your presentation, and you should do that. I guess I'm wondering what happens if we don't spend it by December 30th. Does it revert back to the feds?
That's what's been implied. I don't know if it says that explicitly anywhere just yet. So we will definitely get more information on that.
And
We're still waiting. Real quick, I'm sorry. So part of the ESSER funds, which we'll talk about in a minute, is there's a report due to the state on how we're spending our money by September 30th. We haven't been given the template yet. So we don't know what they're asking for, what they're looking for to even report this information, right? So it's again, we're building the airplane while we're in the air.
So I totally appreciate that. And I think that actually plays a little bit into my concern. I mean, so as a board member who's responsible for budget, approving budget things, this is like a huge amount of unexpected money that I don't feel, I'm not saying that the work was not done on the district side yet at all, but I don't feel like I have enough kind of conceptual idea of what school's going to be like and what we're going to need and what we're going to do intentionally to spend money on what we need to do to bring kids back to the classroom. And so that was the angle I was looking on this, about what are these expenses that will help us bring kids back? Understanding we need to do what we need to do to have distance learning as well, but I'm intentionally looking for that angle. And I just don't see it as much as I would hoped, but I'm not even sure what I'm looking for because it's just a ton of money to spend in a really uncertain environment. I like the idea of buying furniture because that lasts beyond December 30th, 2020, and we might as well take the opportunity to buy things that would be useful forever. I do continue to question, and I'm just going to keep saying it, I am not on board with right now with $975,000 for counseling without a clear idea of how that's needed and how that will be used. But that's again just me. And the same thing, I just want to ask a little bit more about the tutoring. Who is doing that and how? Again, $1 million in 6 months seems like a lot of money. So I'm just trying to break it down by who's doing that, how many hours, what does that look like?
Which particular tutoring are you talking?
It was at the previous page, I think. Yeah,
right.
That one.
Right. So some of these items are placeholders at this time. The budget is not fully fleshed out for how we're going to spend it. Go ahead, Deb. I'm sorry.
We do have a clear plan in place for tutoring. Each school site has developed a plan and submitted it to us. And it's looking like each school site will get around $75,000 to support tutoring at the school site. We're going to use a combination of teachers and paraprofessionals. And then we're also setting some money aside to be able to pay some student tutors as they work with younger kids. So that money would flow through the city of Ukiah because they're set up to pay high schoolers to do good work in our community. So we do have a clear tutoring plan defined. Each school.
I would love to see enough flexibility in this funding so that if you have an employer who could provide a space for learning or tutoring, we could consider contracting with that employer or paying them. I mean, again, my thought is we're providing curriculum and instruction, and every other part of a student's life we're relying on the community to do. Being with them all day long, making sure they're ready for learning all day long, rather than getting them ready for school and dropping them off and picking them up. So we're shifting an enormous amount of the work of educating kids to our community. And I just want to make sure we're leaving enough money to support that community. If there was something that money could do that would help that community be able to pick up those pieces that we can no longer do because we can't have kids in person. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, because it's like late and this is the first time I saw this as of yesterday, and we just haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but that's just what's in my head as this is going on. And I'll stop there.
Well, I think it's great that you already have a school plan for each site that they are already created themselves. So that's very helpful to know.
Superintendent Cuban, do you want to?
No, I just wanted to add that, you know, there are many things on this list that we have expended already. You know, we've had to make a lot of expenditures to get up and running for school. We haven't expended the counseling money, but a lot of these items on here we have spent at the board's, you know, direction at the last board meeting, the discretion that you granted me as superintendent to be able to implement things that we really needed, like technology and software and everything else. So a lot of these are spent.
Right, and in retrospect, I think I probably could have done a better job flagging some of these things. Some of this has already been spent. Some of this, there's already well-developed plans for, and some of it, like the furniture, is really a placeholder. We would obviously come back to the board and talk to you much more about furniture before we actually pull the trigger on spending this money. Again, it's just December is going to sneak up on us pretty quickly. And we're also learning the hard way that if we think we need some furniture, the sooner we order it, the better, because everybody's gonna start ordering furniture as they start preparing to come back. And if we get, you know, back in the queue like we have been with Chromebooks and things, through no fault of our own, we may not get the stuff in time. So there's all these different pressures trying to get a budget together and get timely information to you, right? So.
Well, and I love Trustee Van Sant's approach about furniture, which is, if that's going to hold us up to opening in person because we have these double desks, then we should purchase flexible furniture because it will help us get kids back to school.
Yeah, and also the classrooms will be empty. So as far as assembling the furniture, and there'll probably be staff who could do that, it would be a good time to really focus on that in all our schools, because usually you have to work around, you know, teachers teaching. And I mean, if they're not in their classroom or during certain times, it may be way easier.
And kids grabbing your screwdriver. Indeed. Okay. And tell us again why, for example, the COVID compliant flexible furniture was in 2 different programs.
Just trying to figure out how to spend these different pots of money, right? So we know that there's not enough in just the coronavirus relief funds for all the furniture we would need, but there's a piece of what we can contribute towards it. And
sure,
it's
sure.
Just,
okay.
It's a jigsaw puzzle, right? So.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so if it's okay, I'll move on to the next source of funding, which is the state general fund. And again, you see more money for furniture here. So again, we don't have a great handle on the furniture number yet. We've started working on it. We also know that supply and demand, the price of furniture may go up too. So again, that's another reason to order perhaps sooner too. So again, since we have not identified any other purpose for these monies just yet, so it made sense to put the furniture piece here. But again, we will be coming back to you, and if there's something else that comes up that we need to spend, in the meantime, we can certainly revise this.
And Steve, I'll just add on the furniture that our elementary team has come up with some innovative ways to make large spaces smaller through, you know, they're making some really great dividers right now that could help us expand kids out and meet 6 feet of physical distancing. by expanding them into other places like the multi-purpose room with dividers. And so it's not just desks. There are some other furniture innovations that our elementary staff has come up with.
And are there any outdoor innovations that you're looking at as well?
Great question. Steve, what did you get from the sites?
I haven't gotten a hold. I mean, they're going to do some creative things with what we have. You know, at first when everybody starts spitballing ideas, it's like, oh, let's get some tents and put them up on campus and things like that. Of course, OPSC won't let us do things like that. So some of those ideas went away pretty quickly, but using some of the spaces we do have, definitely. Again, it's a little bit reliant on weather. When it's 107 outside, we probably can't do a lot outside. When it's raining, when it's cold, when it's windy, but there are things we can definitely do in the meantime.
All right, continue on.
So the next set of funds are the gear funds again. And again, the strings are different on some of these pots of money. So we kind of want to use this as a placeholder for any additional supplies and equipment we're going to need. Again, coming back to a hybrid, we're going to need different things. Coming back to everybody on campus, we're going to need different things. And hopefully we get to go through some of these cycles and changes throughout the year. So, and again, these funds are also more flexible. We have till September of 22 to spend these. So my guess is this budget may change several times over the next 12 to 18 months as we see different needs and different priorities. And then lastly, I believe is the ESSER funds are next. Again, this is also September 30th of 22 spending deadline, so we have more time. This is really geared more towards the physical needs of the district rather than the educational needs. So you'll see things in here for masks and thermometers, PPE, indoor air quality. So we're using these funds to buy all of the air scrubbers we bought for the district. Things like that, hotspots, and the monthly service to get through September of 22. The hotspots are in some cases expensive, but really what's expensive on the hotspots is the monthly service for all of them. Think of your cell phone, you pay for the phone once, but you pay that monthly service forever. So we're trying to put money aside for that. And then again, there's a placeholder at the bottom. There's 288,000 that we haven't even identified a good use for yet. So there's TBD on that one. And the last piece was that first pot of money we got in the 99,000 that again, we're trying to free up as we close the books because this money has really no spending deadline and no strings on it as to how we spend it. So this is the money we want to save for anything that does not fit in any other category.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's an overview of all of the different pandemic related funds. So then finally, in terms of our next steps, we need to finish closing the books on 1920. We will revise and bring back these budgets on the LLM and the ESSER funds to you every month. On the board agenda calendar, you're going to see later on in the agenda, we have it slated to bring these to you every month, give you updates on where we're at. And so we'll start lining them up a little bit differently on what's already spent, what's already encumbered, and what's a placeholder and what has a good solid plan in place. We'll also be working with UTA on the formula. We'll be coming back with that in October, November. And then finally in December, we'll have first interim. So with that, should I stop the screen share so we can do questions?
Sure. So let's do any clarifying questions or ideas that people have, and then we can see what kind of a motion there could be a consensus on. Trustee Fernandez.
I know their kids are going to be doing a lot of Zoom or a lot of Google Meets and sitting in front of their Chromebooks all day long. So I really like the idea of conditioning or athletic groups or something where kids can actually see other kids and they're moving their bodies. And I'm wondering, I don't know what would be possible as far as small groups for that would be within under the guidance of our local public health officer. But I didn't see anything set aside for that kind of thing. And I think it would be really great for kids who aren't going to be moving during the day. I mean, they will be doing their PE, but that's going to be hard for a lot of kids who don't have access to areas where they can exercise. It would just be really nice to think that we could do. I know the city of Ukiah has done a great job with this, of having all kinds of little sports camps and different things happening during the summer that were really wonderful for kids. And they the city was super proactive in getting it organized and moving right away after the health orders would come out. And I'm wondering, with all this money, if we could either partner with the city for something like that, using some of our facilities. I know they didn't use our facilities this summer. They just basically used the ARC and outside. But I'm wondering if we could look at that too, because it would be really nice to have as many options as we can for kids to do things that are not sitting in front of a computer and that are actually around other kids, you know, following all the safety guidelines, of course.
Great. Superintendent Cuban, sure.
Trustee Fernandez, would you like a budgeted line item for that in case we can pull that off in the future?
I would love to see money earmarked for that. I mean, even if it means we're having the city of Ukiah do it, like we might have them do tutoring or something. I think, you know, they're set up to be able to do that, but I think maybe using our facilities would be helpful. So they would have more options on having them go concurrently. I would love to see that included, because I think that's something that, you know, kids can Zoom all day long, but moving their bodies and seeing other kids is really important. And for a lot of kids, sports are a reason for going to school, and that's going to be missing in the fall at least. And I really feel for those kids who sports gives them, you know, a lot of meaning in their lives, and it's going to be super hard.
So that's something that we might want to add to this then, small group conditioning, for lack of a better term. But if you have a better term.
Athletics.
Really?
Let's use athletics. So
we could call it extracurricular groups.
Yeah, Zoe, I think that idea is fantastic. I think finding the right partner, somebody that's willing to come to work, would be super important. And so if that means it's the City Ukiah staff, I am in support of doing this, because we need to get the kids out of their homes. So I think it's a great idea.
Why would we not pay our own staff though? I mean, why wouldn't we offer that as supplemental pay to anybody who wanted to lead a little group in yoga or whatever on the field?
I guess you forgot about our recent brutal negotiations that were rather painful.
I guess I understand, but I guess if it's possible, and if my understanding is that we negotiated with a union, but I don't really know how individual teachers or staff feel about doing things that are allowed under the public health order. So I would like to give the opportunity to staff to do things that are allowed under the public health order. I don't know why that would have to be negotiated with the union, but I guess I don't really know.
Well, that's not something that we need to decide tonight. No. We can simply say that we are interested in funding small group extracurricular athletics.
Right, in person is what.
And I guess, Trustee
to the extent that it's safe.
I was thinking of sort of being having it done quickly, because the city is already set up to do these kinds of things. They've got their registration set up, and it's all they can do it. And I know that our staff has a ton on their plate, so I didn't know who would take on this added job. Maybe there is somebody who would. But.
Okay. Yes.
Well, we do have athletic directors at our secondary schools that could get some things organized, and I'm sure we would have some staff people who would like to do something like that. And I would just want to make sure that it's not just athletics. We'd have extracurricular groups that could reach beyond the conditioning potentially.
You could do Zumba out in the field.
And what I appreciate about us is there's no charge to the kids or the families. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important too, that we are able to support all kids and families through whatever we might do.
No, I meant through the city that we would be paying for it. I didn't mean this families would be paying it. That's what we use our money for.
Oh, right. You said registration. Oh, we'd be registering for free or whatever. We could figure that out or something.
But it sounded like the board members were wanting an emphasis on physical activity first, before there was an extracurricular for yearbook, for example.
I'll take anything.
I will take anything.
Okay.
All of it. I think Superintendent Cuban, I'm like, man, if we can get kids out of the house, regardless who does it, I am super it would be wonderful for my household. I'm sure for a lot of other people too.
Socially distant art, anything. I did, it reminds me of, in my professional life, people that are working with children are giving us impact statements of how the virus is, how this pandemic is impacting kids. And the pediatrician group said in all bold letters in an email to me today how incredibly worried they were about the kids that they're not seeing in their clinics and the schools are not able to reach, and like deeply, deeply worried, all caps. And they said, we need to stop talking about what they can't do and what they can do. And they were specifically saying they need to be with their peers in any way you possibly can make that work. And do not be afraid. And these are pediatricians saying, follow, I should share it with you, but I don't have it organized. But I just think that we really need to keep that in mind, and anything we can do to facilitate that outside of the distance learning hours, or even within that, if it's possible, I would really like to spend money on. I'd like to see money set aside for, and I don't know whether this is possible, but again, if there's employers who can find a way to kind of create a learning pod with the kids of their employees that are there in a safe way that follows the public health order, is there some way we can support that? I have no idea why that's possible. And Deb, I totally agree. You need to get the plane up, get the plane going. But, knowing once the plane's flying, I don't want to have boxed ourselves in. So I don't want anything that we come up with as a good idea to say we don't have money, because we apparently have a ton of money. So I want to keep that window open for all of these great ideas that might come up in a month, because we're not quite sure what things are going to look like.
Okay. Questions for?
I did have one question for Mr. Bergman. It makes me nervous because I feel like we're approving all of this money today. Is that what you're asking us to do? Or, are we approving the spending plan? Because if so, my motion might be a little bit different. And I just wanted to understand what we were doing. It wasn't clear if we were just getting information or actually approving something.
It's on the agenda. It's an action item.
To approve all of it, even the stuff through 2022 with the TBD?
You're approving our 45-day budget revision. So you're really approving this year. Not necessarily through September of 22. But again, it's a budget. Budgets change all the time, right? So again, we've already said we'll come back to you next month with revisions to these budgets. So you're approving the budgets as presented tonight. But again, they're not carved in stone.
Okay.
But Steve, some of it's carved in stone because we've already spent it.
Right.
Right.
And I think it's really important for us to approve our tutoring money tonight. So I really want to get that up and running right away for our kids, so that if they need math help, they know how to get it. So I would really love approval on that. Our sites have really good plans developed, and we really want that going as soon as we possibly can. And then I'd like to see the board approve an allocation for extracurricular groups that we could start working on in a couple of weeks when we get the plane off the ground.
Right. But also, does this need to be submitted to the state, approved by the board?
It just goes to the county office and whatever form we choose to give them. So we're going to give them, what we're going to give the county office is the multi-year spreadsheet. That was the other document you got in your packet tonight. Not these sheets we've been spending the last hour or so going over.
Okay.
So this is really an internal working document for us. On all the COVID stuff is an internal working document for us.
Because as you pointed out, Steve, you haven't been given the forms to fill out. You don't even know what you're supposed to be doing yet. Is that kind of true?
It's a free for all. So they're getting a spreadsheet. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Great.
Wow.
Great.
Like
All right. Any other
pile of cash?
clarifying questions? Okay. So at this point, then, we have a couple things. We have one, perhaps consensus that we'd like to fund something safely in-person extracurricular small group in addition to what was listed. And then we have Trustee Van Sant, and I certainly concur that the line for social emotional seems oddly high, because I'm used to contracting with organizations that then build Medi-Cal. So that's another issue. So we can either approve the whole thing with those two changes we just talked about, or we can just pull out the big top two items that are needed. But I would say if we're doing that, then I also want to pull out furniture, because I want it ordered next week. Because I agree, it's going to get so.
And are you saying pull out to approve or pull out to not approve?
No, pull out to approve. Because there's so many things. Some things are already spent, agreed. Right. but if board members don't feel comfortable, you know, going for the whole thing right now, as listed, because some things don't have enough detail and you'd like more detail, then we can wait on other things. Trustee Fernandez.
I guess I would wonder what things, what between now and when we meet again in the middle of October, what things would administration need approved that they're going to be continuing to purchase between now and then, that, you know, 2 weeks from now they say, wow, we need this and it's on this list, but it wasn't approved, we can't buy it. So those things we should probably approve, but the huge things like the counseling, you know, that, you know, maybe we could approve a portion of it or something, but it is a huge number, I agree. So I don't know, I mean, we want it to be workable for administration, but we also, since we don't have to turn in anybody, I don't know that we need to hurry to approve it, because there is time and flexibility.
Except for the fact that, as you said, we don't want there to be a question for staff as to whether or not they have authority to move forward on something they need to move forward on.
Right, not wait for us. So
Right.
I'm not sure which is the best way, I guess.
So if you want to hold up counseling, you need to let us know, because we're starting to work with agencies on that, and we would need to tell them that we don't have funds for that.
Right. Well, how it,
It's
all
not
right, go
that we
ahead,
want to
Trustee
hold up-
Nelson.
It's not that, it's not the concept of holding up the counseling. It's the concept of spending $1 million before December on counseling. And I think that my pitch to the board is that I don't know, whatever Zoe said, I'm in favor of that. I think we need to give that latitude to the district to carry on with business, because, you know, we get snapshots. And so I'm not sure where that distance is. $1 million on counseling is a lot. It'd be nice if it was more focused down the line.
I'm going to throw something out. How would people feel about changing the $1 million on counseling to 250,000, taking 250,000 of the remaining to put it for safe in-person extracurricular, and leave the remaining 500,000 and all the to be determines in a pile to be determined? And we come back and look at that, but all the other small items would be approved.
So
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the small items being approved. It's for me, again, those big, huge ticket items, when we haven't, it sounds like we haven't even spoken to had complete conversations with the service providers yet. I mean, about exactly whether they need it or how that would look. And we don't have the experience of what distance learning is looking like with our existing social emotional counseling staff, whose work will look different during that time. So I just don't feel like we have enough information to commit that large amount of money right now. We might have it by the next meeting. It might become super clear that it's needed or not needed in just 1 month's time. So
right, there could be great proposals that come forward.
Right, I'm happy to approve 250,000 tonight so that you can get going on those conversations, and then we'll maybe know more by mid-September, and maybe somebody will have had a super awesome idea that supports social emotional health that is not exactly counseling as well, to support that category of need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Trustee Fernandez, you started to say something?
I was going to say, so Trustee Mova, you're saying approve 250,000 for counseling right today, but keep a big chunk that could be available for counseling if that turns out that we need $1 million, because we could still approve it next month and it would give us plenty of time still. That's what you're saying, right? You're not saying necessarily we can't spend it. We're not holding up the counseling. We're just waiting to see if we need that full amount.
Right. So just because sometimes it helps to have an idea to bounce off of, I'm saying, right, of the $1 million, we're going to do 250,000 now for social emotional. We're going to do 250,000 now for safe in-person extracurricular. And that still leaves 500,000 for social emotional.
Because I really don't want to be considered the board that is holding up counseling for kids, because I don't think that's an accurate representation of this board for sure.
And I was glad that Trustee Nelson said that so quickly as well.
Yeah, we're not, I don't want to hold up counseling for kids at all, but I think we're just being cautious about that large amount of money. So if it's needed, I would be all for it, but I do agree that it's prudent to maybe make sure we could spend that all.
I agree. And I'm not at all saying that we should hold up counseling for kids. I just happen to know that you can bill Medi-Cal for counseling for kids. And we have a lot of children that are eligible for Medi-Cal. So I think that question needs to be answered. And I also know we have a lot of staff that are perfectly skilled and capable of doing that kind of counseling.
Right.
And I anticipate they will be.
Trustee Barrett or Trustee Arkin, do you have anything to weigh in on?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm fine with that idea and your idea of the 250 for counseling and the 250 for some kind of extracurricular or athletic activity, and put the 500 aside. I'm perfectly fine with that and approve the rest of the budget.
Okay. Any other modifications? And if not, somebody could make a motion.
I move that we do what I just said and what you said, Ann.
Okay. I believe her motion then is trustee, Ms. Ornelas, did you understand the motion? You did. Okay, it was clear. Is it clear to the trustees?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay,
Deb,
all those in favor?
Wait, can I ask, Deb, does that sound like that would be workable for you?
Absolutely. Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrickman.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Steve, we're so lucky to have you. Thank you for being here.
No place I'd rather be, right? This is interesting.
That's the attitude we like. E2, approval of the 12-month board agenda planning calendar for the school year 2020 to 2021.
So we know this is going to change. These are mostly just the routine things that we anticipate having, but this year is going to be a different and challenging year, we know. So we anticipate this calendar changing more than in previous years. We still have to start the work with our equity committee. We know there will be some things on the board agenda related to equity that we haven't defined yet. So I will say to you that this 12-month planning calendar is more of a draft than normal. So I won't hold you to it in 2 months when you say, Deb, can we have a report on this or that? We just know that things are going to change, and our reports are really going to focus around our models that we have, that whichever model that we're in, we want to do regular reports to the board on how students are doing.
Excellent. Trustee Nelson?
I move that we approve the 12-month board agenda planning calendar for 2021.
Is there a second? Trustee Vincent?
I'll second.
Yeah, I was trying to second. Sorry, I was unmuting, but
No. Trustee Arkin?
she beat me to it.
Sorry.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we have a planning calendar recognizing that it is less in concrete than it usually is. Board member representatives to committees. I believe our bylaws or governing principles mean that the superintendent appoints the board members to committees. Would you like to announce the appointment?
I'd like to know from the board who is interested in what. And then I know that at the June board meeting, the board appointed Trustee Diaz and Trustee Van Sant to the equity committee already. And then we wanted to hear from you on what your interests are so that we can send you a letter appointing you to the committee.
Who is interested in working with the classified negotiations? Oh, I have a hand. Trustee Fernandez
I would love to continue working with the CSEA unit.
and Trustee Barrett, I saw your hand as well.
Yes, I would work with the CSEA.
Who would be interested in working with Ukiah Teachers Association negotiations?
All right, I'll do.
We see Trustee Arkin and Trustee Nelson are both volunteering. We know that we have 2 for equity. I would be fine continuing on the city school committee unless someone wants to grab it. Okay. And last year, Trustee Diaz and Trustee Van Sant were on the DAC, but I think that I would volunteer to take that position for Trustee Van Sant since in the rotation, she's more likely than not going to be the next chair. So she'll have less time.
I would appreciate that, President Mogard.
Excellent. All right, well, we will wait and see what the superintendent's decisions are when we get our
Thank you so much for all you do.
Parent and Community Partnership Superintendent Report. Did you have anything else other than the agenda items you've already covered?
No, I think I've said enough tonight, but just thank you for all that you do, board. Totally appreciate you.
Any board members would care to share? A bit late. We're looking a little tired. Nothing? All right. It's your last chance. Hearing none.
How about just good luck for Monday? How about that?
Right. Arousing good luck.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Trustee Barrett moves.
I'll second.
Trustee Van Sant seconds. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now for our final item for the evening, the planning calendar. Our next meeting is
September the 10th is the next regular scheduled meeting. So we would like to have agenda planning on Wednesday, September the 2nd at noon.
I haven't done agenda planning and I don't even remember ever doing agenda planning, so I wouldn't mind doing it.
I'm sure you've done it once.
I mean, not in like, I don't know, like months and months. Debbie, would you mind emailing the reminder about agenda planning?
I do. I will. I don't mind doing it. I will do it.
But I mean, like even like today, so I can get it. I'm just afraid I'm out here in a different place. I'm not going to remember to write it down, and yeah.
I can't do 12. I could do 1:30 on Wednesday, the 2nd.
1:30.
Yeah. Could that work?
Yes.
Could that work with you, Trustee Van Sant?
Think so.
Okay. We need another person, correct?
Yes.
I just did it, so I'm out.
It was Fernandez and Arkin last time. It's in the middle of might not be a great time for Nelson. Excellent. Barrett comes through. Thank you.
I think I can do it on the 2nd.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay.
At 1:30?
1:30. Yes.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay. Is that it? Are we adjourned?
That's it.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you very much for
Bravo.
your time. We are adjourned.
Thank
Good
you.
luck on Monday.